The Ghost Diplomats. The first time Dr. Jordan Blake spoke to a dead person, she thought she was having a stroke. It happened during a routine neurological exam at Massachusetts General Hospital. She'd been monitoring a coma patient's brain activity when the readings spiked impossibly high, patterns that shouldn't exist in a living human mind. Then she heard it, a whisper that seemed to come from inside her own skull, speaking in a language she'd never learned, but somehow understood. "Tell my daughter I forgive her." The patient had been dead for 3 minutes by the time the crash cart arrived. Jordan never told anyone what she'd heard. She convinced herself it was exhaustion, stress, the cumulative weight of too many double shifts. She buried the incident beneath layers of rational explanation and got back to work. That was 6 months before the veil arrived. They came on a Tuesday, not with fire or fury, not with the theatrical drama humanity had imagined for first contact. The veil simply appeared in Earth's orbit, 17 obsidian spheres that drank in light and reflected nothing back. They broadcast a single message across every frequency, in every language, simultaneously. "We wish to speak with your dead." The world fractured along predictable lines. Governments convened emergency sessions. Religious leaders proclaimed everything from salvation to damnation. Scientists scrambled to understand technology that made their best theories look like cave paintings. And the veil waited, patient as gravestones, offering no explanation, no compromise. They would only negotiate with the deceased. Jordan watched the chaos unfold from her apartment in Boston, nursing lukewarm coffee and wondering if the entire species had lost its mind. The television flickered through talking heads debating the impossible. How do you negotiate with beings who refuse to speak to the living? How do you send ambassadors to the grave? Her phone rang at 3 a.m. "Dr. Blake, this is Director Chen from the UN Special Contact Division. We need you in New York immediately." "I think you have the wrong person," Jordan said, already knowing she was lying to herself. "Dr. Blake, you're one of 47 documented cases worldwide, medical professionals who've reported communication with the recently deceased. We've been monitoring neural pattern databases, incident reports, psychiatric evaluations. Your name came up." Jordan's hand tightened on the phone. "That was a hallucination, stress-induced auditory—" "Dr. Blake, we don't have time for denial. The Veil have given us 30 days to produce a diplomatic envoy they can communicate with. If we fail, they leave forever, and we'll never know what they wanted to offer us or warn us about." 17 hours later, Jordan stood in a converted UN conference room that smelled of disinfectant and desperation. 23 people sat around her, each looking as exhausted and uncertain as she felt. These were her fellow sensitives, as the UN had taken to calling them. Nurses, paramedics, hospice workers, even a funeral director from Mumbai. All of them had heard voices from beyond. None of them wanted to be there. Dr. Amara Okonkwo, the project's lead xenopsychologist, stood at the head of the room. She was tall, gray-haired, with eyes that had seen too much and still chose to see more. "I won't lie to you," she began, dispensing with pleasantries. "We don't understand what you can do. We don't understand how the Veil know you can do it. But every culture in human history has documented individuals who claim contact with the deceased. We dismissed it as superstition, fraud, grief-induced hallucination. The Veil clearly know better." A hand shot up. Marcus Webb, the funeral director. "What exactly are you asking us to do?" "We're asking you to become a bridge," Amara said quietly. "The Veil require a human representative for their diplomatic overtures, but that representative must be deceased. We need you to make contact with someone qualified to speak for humanity, someone who can negotiate on our behalf."
You want us to summon a ghost to be Earth's ambassador to aliens? Jordan heard herself say. The absurdity of the sentence didn't make it less true. Yes, Amara replied, without hesitation. We've compiled a list of candidates, historical figures, diplomats, scientists who've passed. We need you to reach out, explain the situation, and ask if they're willing to serve. The room erupted in protests, questions, accusations of insanity. Jordan sat silent, remembering that voice in the hospital. Tell my daughter I forgive her. It hadn't been stress. It had been real. What if we can't? Someone asked. What if we try and fail? Amara's expression hardened. Then humanity loses its only chance at whatever the Veil are offering. We've intercepted fragments of their communications. They're part of something they call the Coalition, a network of civilizations spanning the galaxy. But they have one requirement for membership. She paused, letting the weight settle. The Coalition only accepts species that have transcended the barrier between life and death. Species that understand consciousness doesn't end, it transforms. They see death not as an ending, but as a graduation. They'll only negotiate with those who've passed through that threshold. Jordan felt ice crystallize in her chest. You're saying they want us to die? No, Amara said. They want us to accept that death isn't what we think it is, that there's something beyond, and they'll only share their knowledge with those who've already crossed over or those who can speak to them. The meeting dissolved into chaos after that. Half the sensitives walked out, declaring the entire thing a dangerous delusion. Jordan stayed, not because she believed, but because she couldn't shake a growing certainty. The voice in the hospital had been preparing her for this moment. 3 days later, they made their first attempt. The chamber they'd constructed looked like a morgue married a recording studio. White walls, medical equipment, and enough sensors to map every neuron in Jordan's brain. At the center sat a simple chair, and next to it, a photograph. Rear Admiral Patricia Vance, decorated astronaut, MIT astrophysicist, former UN ambassador to the European Space Agency. She died 2 years ago from pancreatic cancer. On paper, she was the perfect candidate. Brilliant, diplomatic, familiar with the cosmos and politics alike. Jordan studied the photograph. Patricia Vance smiled back her, confident and competent in her dress uniform, every inch the professional humanity needed. How do I even start? Jordan asked. Amara adjusted the neuromonitors attached to Jordan's temples. Every sensitive we've interviewed describes it differently. Some meditate, some pray, some just listen. You'll need to find your own method. And if nothing happens, then we try again and again until something does. Jordan closed her eyes. She felt ridiculous, sitting in a government facility trying to summon the dead like some carnival psychic. But she thought of those obsidian spheres hanging in orbit, patient and waiting. She thought of the voice in the hospital. She thought of her mother. Her mother, who died when she was 16, brain aneurysm, sudden and merciless. She'd studied neurology because of her, had dedicated her life to understanding the organ that had betrayed the person she loved most. She'd never told anyone that sometimes, late at night, she still felt her mother's presence, dismissed it as wishful thinking, the mind's refusal to accept loss. What if it had been real all along? Patricia Vance, my name is Jordan Blake. I need to speak with you. Humanity needs to speak with you. Silence. The hum of medical equipment, Amara's pen scratching on a clipboard. She tried again, reaching for that strange space between thought and sensation where the hospital voice had emerged. Admiral Vance, I know this sounds impossible, but there are beings from another world, and they'll only speak to those who've crossed over. We need your help. We need... The world tilted sideways. Jordan gasped, suddenly drowning in sensation that wasn't hers. Cold. Not the chill of a morgue, but the absolute cold of space, of cellular decay, of a body remembering its death. Then warmth. Not heat, but presence. Consciousness pressing against hers like a hand through fog. Who dares? The voice exploded through Jordan's mind, nothing like the gentle whisper from the hospital. This was vast, layered, as if 1,000 conversations were happening simultaneously in the space of a single word. Jordan forced words through clenched teeth. Admiral Patricia Vance? I was. I am. I have become something more. Why do you pull me back toward the noise of flesh? Because the veil have come. Because they want to speak with humanity's dead. Because we need someone who understands diplomacy and science and the veil. Something changed in the presence, sharpening with interest. They've finally decided Earth is ready. How long has it been since I shed my body? 2 years. 2 years. A heartbeat. I've lived centuries here in the realm beyond your limited senses. I've spoken with Da Vinci about the nature of flight, debated Einstein about the malleable nature of time. I've learned languages composed of pure mathematics, watched civilizations rise and fall in the spaces between thoughts. And you want me to return to the world of diplomacy and committees and compromise? Jordan felt Amara's hand on her shoulder, grounding her. We are asking you to serve one more time, to be the bridge between what we are and what we might become. Silence. The presence withdrew slightly, considering. Show me these veil. Let me see them through your eyes. Jordan didn't know how, but somehow she opened herself, letting the presence flow through her memories. The obsidian spheres, the message, the 30-day deadline, now down to 23. Ah, Patricia's voice resonated with understanding. They're testing you, not your technology or your warfare capabilities. They're testing whether you're ready to accept the truth that death is a door, not a wall. That consciousness is the universe's most persistent force. We don't end, Dr. Blake. We transform. We expand. We join something infinitely larger than our individual selves. Will you help us? Yes, but you need to understand what you are asking. I cannot simply possess you and speak on your behalf. The translation requires sacrifice. Every time we connect, it will damage your neural pathways, cause you pain, age you in ways that have nothing to do with time. You'll be walking the border between life and death, and eventually that border will dissolve entirely. Jordan's hands trembled. How many times can I do this before you join us on this side? That depends on your resilience. Perhaps a dozen connections, perhaps fewer. Are you willing to pay that price for your species? The medical equipment around Jordan screamed warnings. Blood trickled from her nose. Amara started forward, but Jordan held up a hand. I am, she said. Then let us begin. Bring me to the veil. The first diplomatic session took place in a converted satellite facility in Nevada. The veil had sent down a single shuttle, a teardrop of midnight that reflected no light and made no sound. From it emerged 3 figures wrapped in what looked like living shadows, their forms humanoid, but wrong in ways Jordan's eyes refused to process clearly. Jordan sat across from them. Admiral Vance's presence coiled inside her mind like a second consciousness. Around them, cameras recorded everything. Translators monitored for any verbal communication. Military personnel watched from behind reinforced glass, weapons ready for a threat no one understood. The veil remained motionless for 17 minutes. Then one spoke, its voice like wind through empty corridors. "We sense the one who has crossed. Speak, transformed one. Tell us, does your kind understand yet?" Jordan felt Patricia rise to the surface. Her mouth moved with words that weren't entirely her own. "Understand what? That you only speak to the dead? That you've built an entire civilization around those who've passed beyond?" "Not passed beyond, passed through. Death is not an end, but a metamorphosis. When biological form ceases, consciousness sheds its limited vessel and expands into its true state. We are not dead, human ambassador. We are finally, fully alive." Patricia's presence shuddered with realization. Through Jordan's lips, she whispered, You're an entire species of... We are the veil, because we have lifted the veil between existence and consciousness. Our people discovered the truth millennia ago. Physical form is merely the caterpillar stage of sentient life. Death is the cocoon. What emerges is infinite, networked, capable of experiencing reality in ways flesh cannot contain. Jordan felt Patricia's excitement, her scientific mind racing through implications. And the coalition? 47 civilizations, all have reached the same understanding. All have learned to communicate across the boundary between formed and formless consciousness. This is the prerequisite for joining us. Not technology, not military might, but the wisdom to recognize that individual death is the gateway to collective immortality. Jordan heard herself ask, her own horror breaking through, "You want humanity to die?" "We want humanity to evolve, but that choice must be made freely, understanding its true nature. That is why we speak only to those who have already transformed. Only they can testify to what awaits. Only they can help your kind make an informed decision." The session lasted 4 hours. By the end, Jordan's vision had blurred, her neural pathways burning from the strain of hosting 2 consciousnesses. Patricia withdrew, leaving Jordan collapsed in her chair, trembling and sick. But they had made contact. They had opened negotiations, and Jordan had learned the terrible truth. The Veil weren't offering humanity a place in their coalition. They were offering an ultimatum. Evolve beyond death, or remain forever isolated among the stars. Over the following weeks, Jordan became a revolving door for the dead. She channeled Admiral Vance 14 more times, each session leaving her weaker, her memories more fragmented. But they needed different perspectives, different expertise for different aspects of the negotiation. So Jordan reached out again and again, becoming a living switchboard between worlds. She spoke with Dr. Evelyn Torres, an ethicist who died in a car accident, to discuss the moral implications. She channeled Ambassador Kwame Osei, dead 5 years, to handle the political frameworks. She even made contact with Dr. Robert Chen, Patricia's old colleague, to verify the scientific claims the Veil were making. Each connection left scars. Jordan developed tremors in her left hand. Her hair began graying at the temples. She'd black out for hours, waking with no memory of the lost time, but with knowledge she hadn't possessed before. Mathematics she'd never studied, languages she'd never learned, memories that belonged to the deceased. Amara monitored her decline with growing concern. "Jordan, we need to stop. Your neural degradation is accelerating. If we continue—" Jordan interrupted, her voice hoarse. If we stop, we have no diplomatic channel. The veil won't speak to anyone else. It has to be me. You're dying, slowly but measurably. Each connection pulls you further from life. I know. Jordan studied her hands, noticing how translucent her skin had become. I can feel them sometimes, even when I'm not channeling. The dead, they're always there, just beyond perception, like voices in another room. That's not normal. Even for sensitives, the boundary should be clearer. Maybe there isn't supposed to be a boundary. Maybe that's what the veil have been trying to show us. The final negotiation session arrived on day 28.
Jordan entered the chamber knowing this would be her last channeling. Her body had reached its limit. The medical team had been blunt. One more connection might be fatal. Her consciousness was already fragmenting, spreading thin between life and whatever lay beyond. But they needed one final answer. The veil had made their offer clear. Humanity could join the coalition, but only if they underwent the transcendence, a technological process that would sever biological life and transition consciousness into its pure form. Not death, they insisted, but evolution. The end of disease, aging, physical suffering. The beginning of existence on a cosmic scale. Admiral Vance materialized inside Jordan's mind one last time, familiar as an old friend now. "Are you ready?" "Does it matter?" Jordan asked silently. "You could refuse, walk away, let someone else carry this burden. Could I? Or have I already crossed too far?" Patricia's presence felt sad, knowing. "You've been changing, haven't you? Feeling yourself become less solid, less singular." "Yes." "That's the transformation beginning. You've spent so much time hosting the dead that the border between you and them has worn away. You're becoming what the veil are, not quite living, not quite past, but something in between." Jordan opened her eyes. The veil representatives waited across from her, patient as always. "We're ready for humanity's answer," one said. Patricia spoke through Jordan. "We've shown us wonders. We've proven that consciousness persists. But you're asking us to make a choice that can't be unmade, to willingly surrender biological existence for the promise of something greater. It is not a promise. It is a certainty. We have shown you proof. Let the transformed ones testify." And they did. Over the next hour, Jordan channeled voice after voice, every dead diplomat, scientist, and thinker they'd contacted. Each testified to the reality beyond, the expansion of consciousness, the truth of continued existence. But Jordan felt something else beneath their words, a homesickness, a longing. These consciousnesses, vast and expanded as they were, still reached back toward the world of flesh and sensation. They praised the infinity, but remembered the finite with something that felt like grief. "Why do you come back?" Jordan asked, her own voice breaking through. "If existence beyond is so magnificent, why do any of you answer when we call?" The silence that followed was deafening. Finally, Patricia answered, her voice carrying the weight of 2 years beyond life. "Because we miss it. The taste of coffee, the warmth of sunlight, the ache of muscles after exercise. We've gained infinity, but we've lost something irreplaceable, the sharp, bright, terrible beauty of being finite, of being small, of being real in ways we no longer are." The veil shifted, their shadowy forms rippling with what might have been surprise or irritation. The transformed one speaks from incomplete adaptation. Given time, such nostalgia fades. The formed life always mourns its old limitations. This passes. "Does it?" Jordan asked. She felt herself fragmenting, consciousness spreading like water through sand. "You've offered us evolution, the chance to transcend death,
to join your coalition, to spread across the cosmos as pure consciousness. And I felt the truth of it. I've touched that expanded state. I've sensed how vast existence becomes when you're no longer trapped in failing flesh. But here's what you haven't told us. It's not a trade, it's a surrender. You don't get to keep the small, precious, fragile moments that make existence worth experiencing. You gain everything and lose the only thing that ever mattered, the ability to be fully, completely, impossibly present in a single, perfect moment. The veil remained motionless.
Humanity's answer, Jordan said, feeling her consciousness beginning to slip its moorings, is no. We choose life. Messy, finite, painful, beautiful life. We choose to die as individuals so that our species can continue living. We choose the caterpillar, knowing we'll never see ourselves become butterflies. We choose limitation, because limitation gives meaning to everything we do. One of the veil leaned forward. You would reject immortality? Reject the stars themselves? We reject the price, Jordan said. Find us again when you've learned to offer both, infinite consciousness and finite presence, the expansion of death and the intimacy of life. Until then, we'll stay here in our fragile bodies, making the most of our brief time. The room erupted around her. Officials shouting, Amara rushing forward, but Jordan barely heard it. She felt herself dissolving, consciousness fragmenting into pieces that no longer cohered into a single self. Patricia held her together, barely. You've doomed your species to isolation, one veil said, though whether with anger or respect, Jordan couldn't tell. No, she breathed. I've given them the right to choose their own evolution, in their own time, on their own terms. The veil departed without another word. Their ships lifted from Earth, 17 obsidian spheres rising into orbit, then vanishing into whatever space between spaces they called home. Humanity remained, finite, mortal, alone, and alive. Jordan woke 3 weeks later in a hospital bed. Amara sat beside her, gray hair disheveled, eyes red from sleepless nights. Welcome back. We weren't sure you'd make it. Did I? Jordan asked. Her voice sounded strange, layered, as if multiple people spoke through her throat. Your body's survived. Your mind, she hesitated. You're different. The neuroscans show patterns we've never seen. It's like you exist in multiple states simultaneously. Jordan closed her eyes. She could feel them still. Admiral Vance, Dr. Torres, Ambassador Osei, all the voices she'd channeled. They hadn't left. They'd become part of her, woven into her consciousness like threads in a fabric. She was no longer entirely alive, but she wasn't dead either. She had become the bridge she'd promised to be. The world's divided, Amara said. Half think you're a hero who saved humanity from a terrible mistake. Half think you're a traitor who rejected our only chance at the stars. The UN wants to debrief you. Religious leaders want to study you. Scientists want to understand how you're still functioning with your current neural state. And what do you want? Jordan asked. Amara smiled sadly. I want to know if it was worth it. The sacrifice, the transformation. Was saving humanity worth losing yourself? Jordan thought about that. She felt Admiral Vance's presence within her, still curious, still exploring the strange space Jordan now inhabited. She felt all the others, a choir of consciousness that would be with her forever. I didn't lose myself, she said finally. I expanded. Not the way the veil wanted, not by surrendering life, but by embracing both sides of existence. I'm alive and I'm dead. I'm singular
And I'm plural. I'm the proof that you don't have to choose. Is that even possible? Can someone exist in that state long term? I don't know. Maybe I'm a fluke. Maybe I'm the first step towards something new. Or maybe I'm just broken in a way that looks like evolution. She sat up slowly, testing her body, finding it responded, mostly. But I know this, the veil will come back. Maybe not in our lifetime, but they'll return. And when they do, humanity needs to be ready with a better answer than yes or no. We need to find a third option, a way to embrace transformation without surrendering what makes us human. And you will help us prepare? She looked at her hands, seeing them flicker between solid and translucent, between one state and another. She heard voices in the spaces between heartbeats, not just the dead she'd channeled, but others, countless others, all the consciousness that persisted beyond physical form.
"I'll try," she said, "for as long as this body lasts, for as long as I remain whatever I am now." Amara squeezed her hand. The touch felt distant but real, proof that Jordan still existed in the world of flesh and sensation, even as she stretched into spaces beyond. "What do you hear?" Amara asked. "Right now, in this moment." Jordan listened, not with her ears, but with the strange new sense that had emerged from hosting the dead. She heard the hospital around her, patients breathing, hearts beating, the quiet symphony of life continuing. And beneath it, like a second layer of reality, she heard the vast chorus of those who'd passed, still present, still witnessing, still connected to the world they left behind. "I hear everything," Jordan whispered. "The living and the dead, the present and the past, the individual and the infinite. I hear humanity struggling to understand what it wants to become. And what do we want to become?" Jordan smiled, feeling Admiral Vance's presence stir with approval. Something new, something the Veil never imagined. Not a species that chooses life or death, but one that learns to honor both, to die as individuals while remaining connected, to live fully in the moment while understanding those moments are eternal. That sounds impossible. So did talking to the dead, Jordan pointed out, until it wasn't. She stood, legs shaky but functional, and walked to the window. Outside, the city continued its ancient rhythms, people walking, working, living their brief, precious lives. Above, the stars waited, full of civilizations that had made their choice between caterpillar and butterfly. Humanity had chosen to remain a caterpillar a little longer, to crawl rather than fly, to live in limitation rather than expand into infinity. And watching the city below, Jordan knew it had been the right choice. Not forever, evolution couldn't be denied, but for now, for this moment, for this generation. They would find their own way to the stars, not by surrendering life, but by understanding that life and death weren't opposites. They were partners in the greatest dance of all, the transformation of consciousness through time, through space, through the infinite strange wonder of existence itself. "Dr. Blake," Amara said from behind her, "the UN wants to know, will you continue serving as a diplomatic consultant, in case the Veil return, in case we need someone who can speak to both sides?" Jordan turned back to her, this woman who'd guided her through transformation, who'd watched her die and return and become something unprecedented. "Yes," she said simply, "I'll be the bridge, for as long as I last. For as long as humanity needs someone standing between worlds. And when you finally do cross over completely, when you become more dead than alive, Jordan smiled, feeling all her internal voices smile with her, a chorus of the transformed, the transcended, the ones who'd learned that endings were really beginnings in disguise.
"Then I'll send someone back," she said. "Someone to be the next bridge. Because that's what the dead do for the living, Amara. We remember, we witness, we reach back across the boundary and remind you that you're never truly alone." "Even in death?" "Especially in death," Jordan said. "That's the part the veil got wrong. They think death is graduation, the final evolution. But it's not an ending or a beginning, it's a continuation. We don't transcend life, we carry it with us into whatever comes next. Every conversation, every connection, every moment of being impossibly, temporarily, beautifully alive." She touched the window, feeling the cold glass against her fingertips, still alive enough to feel physical sensation, still dead enough to sense the vast consciousness beyond. "The veil will return," she said quietly, "and when they do, humanity will have an answer they never expected. We'll show them something they lost millennia ago, that you don't have to choose between the finite and the infinite. You can be both. You can honor death without worshiping it. You can embrace life without clinging to it." "And if they don't accept that answer?" Jordan looked up at the stars, feeling all her voices joined together in harmony, the living and the dead, the transformed and the transforming, all of them part of the same great mystery. "Then we'll keep being human, stubbornly, impossibly, gloriously human, living our brief lives, making our small choices, building our tiny civilizations on this pale blue dot. And maybe, just maybe, that will be enough." Enough for what? Enough to change their minds. Enough to show the universe that there's more than one way to transcend mortality. Enough to prove that the greatest evolution isn't abandoning what makes us human. It's learning to carry it with us forever into whatever vast future awaits. She turned from the window, facing the world of the living with eyes that had seen death and chosen to remain. "Come on, Amara. We have work to do, a species to prepare, a future to build. And somewhere out there, the veil are watching, waiting to see what humanity becomes." "And what will we become?" Jordan felt Admiral Vance's presence warm within her, approving, excited for whatever came next. She felt all the voices she carried, all the consciousness she'd touched, all the dead who'd trusted her to speak their truth. Something new, something beautiful, something that honors both the caterpillar and the butterfly and refuses to choose between them. She walked toward the door, toward life, toward whatever strange hybrid existence awaited her. Behind her, the stars shone through the window, patient and eternal. And somewhere in the spaces between, the dead whispered their approval, their hope, their endless connection to the world they'd left behind but never truly abandoned. The ghost diplomats had spoken, and humanity, finally, had learned to listen.